Okay, good evening and welcome everyone. Again, welcome. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Monday, December 8th for the RTM State of the Town meeting. With 69 members present and of a possible 100-person body, we do have a quorum. Before I turn the podium over to your moderator, Seth Morton, I'd like to welcome two of the newest members who were just sworn in this evening to the RTM. In District 5, we have Zachary Flightman. Zachary, if you wouldn't mind standing up, we can introduce yourself. And then Diana Botticelli. Diana Botticelli in District 3. Also sworn in tonight, but was done remotely, a new member of District 5 is Annie Epperly, whom you will get a chance to meet hopefully in January. For anyone who was elected this November and who is yet to be sworn in, and also John Flippen, who came into the office to be sworn in. John, stand up. John came into the office the other day. New member of District 4. So thank you. I do still have some members of the RTM incumbents who did not sign the oath book. Again, if you have not been sworn in, you are not allowed to vote and participate in this meeting as a voting member. So if you'd like to see me before we get started, please come down and sign in. Otherwise, again, if you've not been sworn in, you must refrain from voting as you're not quite official yet. And with that, I will turn it over to Seth.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Great to see you all. First, without objection, I'll accept the agenda. Any objection? Next, I'll look for a motion to approve the minutes of November 10. Do I have a motion, please? Yes, fair. Second, please. Amy, okay. Any additions, deletions, issues? Okay. Ready to vote. All in favor of approving the minutes of November 10th, say aye. Aye. Opposed, I hear none. Next item on the agenda is nominating RTM representative to the Pear Tree Point Building Committee. David Bulletin has withdrawn his interest, and so we have two individuals, Ms. Trevor Harley and Sandra Savage. From a procedural standpoint, what I do is, in alphabetical order, have Trevor come up and speak for 2 minutes or less, and then Sandy Savage. So, Trevor? Oh, yeah. Excuse me. One other detail. Are there any other nominations? Okay, thanks. Okay, Trevor.
Thank you, Seth, and good evening to my fellow members of the RTM. My name is Trevor Hawley. I'm from District 6, and I live at 45 Mansfield Avenue with my wife, Lauren, and our 2 kids, Oliver and Emerson. We've been proud residents of Darien for 4.5 years. And by way of quick introduction, as I'm a relatively new face, I had caucused on to the RTM this spring, initially serving on TGS&A, and following the recent election, I'm now going to be joining the Parks and Rec Committee moving forward. My interest in this position, when I was telling my wife, she was like, it's about a parking lot and drainage, and I said yes, but Pear Tree is near and dear to our hearts and a meaningful place for my family. We spend most of our summers, even early spring and into the falls there. And while we're relatively new to town, I thought it would be important to highlight that we probably have spent more time than some more tenured residents of Darien. It's a place we use, we care about, and we want to see preserved and improved for the long term. Professionally, I've spent 15 years managing large, complex enterprise software sales, projects that require alignment across dozens of stakeholders, many stakeholders, clear communication, steady consensus building, and where delivering on schedule is critical. This experience translates to me what is important about the Pear Tree Committee, someone who can help navigate the complicated process, keep people coordinated, and ensure that a decision remains transparent and community-driven, and help to guide this project to completion before next summer. What I believe uniquely positions me is a fresh set of eyes. The committee already includes deep expertise from finance to maritime construction, and the plans have already been reviewed and approved at length. The remit for this committee is to project manage the construction process and ensure the end result is delivered on time. Given the already impressive team that's in place, I strongly believe that this RTM representative should reflect an everyday resident that actually uses Pear Tree, sees through the perspective of families who rely on it, and will ask the questions that both newer and long-term residents would like to know. If appointed, I'll be sure to bring a resident-first mindset, keep open communication, and be collaborative, and take a practical approach to ensure that the Pear Tree remains one of Darien's most special places for years to come. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Trevor. Sandy?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Sandy Savage, and I am from District 4. I have lived in Darien for 36 years. I have raised 4 children here. I've been on the RTM for 25 years. I've been on the Parks and Rec Committee for 8 years. I have always been attentive to the running of the town and all the facilities, and followed very closely what was happening with Pear Tree Beach. I am aware when the previous building committee was working on improvements, this led me to get on the Pear Tree Beach working group after the improvements were put on hold. In the working group, we created a survey for the town of the people to find out what the people truly wanted to have done to improve Pear Tree Beach. I have been a boat owner for over 30 years. My family trailers our boat and uses the boat launch every time we go out. So I am very aware of the boat ramp and the parking at the beach. I have attended the last 2 meetings of the Pear Tree Beach Building Committee, so I'm up to date with what is happening. I would love for the RTM to be the RTM representative on the building committee. I hope you will support me as the Parks and Rec Committee has. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you, Sandy. So district chairs, if they just come down and pick up the ballots, you just vote for one person.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman. Seth, over here. Over here, Seth.
Ah, yes.
Point of information. I think it would be useful for us to know who the other members of this committee are already, and if they represent another organization or a part of town government. And second of all, there's reference in the document to maintaining the party split depending on party affiliation. What is the member mix now, Republican, Democrat, unaffiliated? And do the candidates that are standing for office this evening affect that? Better to ask this question now than find out later.
No, it's, the balance is not affected in this case either way. As far as the names of all the people on it, I don't have it. I can certainly distribute it out to everybody No problem.
In looking at the breakdown, the political affiliation of the current membership, I do not believe that the party affiliation or lack thereof of this member will impact the balance.
Thank you very
It's
much.
an important question.
It won't affect minority representation.
We are awaiting the update of the current members of the body. I know there is obviously a member from the Board of Selectmen, a member from the Board of Finance, a member from the Park and Rec Commission, and members from the public. Do I have all the ballots for the vote for this vote? Any chair still waiting? Any member who has not yet submitted their vote? Okay. One more.
Okay, in the meantime, it'll take us a while to count the votes. In the meantime, I think we'll proceed to the next item on the agenda, which is approve and not reject the proposed contract between the Darien Board of Education and the Darien Education Association. On behalf of the Education Committee of the RTM, Leza Lucas.
Before I get started, I want to welcome Peter Savarine to District 6. He's new to the RTM as well. Good evening. I'm Liza Lucas. I'm also from District 6. I am the chair of the RTM Education Committee. And tonight I'm moving Resolution 25-27 of the Representative Town Meeting of the Town of Darien for consideration and action on a proposed contract between the Darien Board of Education and the Darien Education Association. Do I have a second? Thank you. Without objection, I will waive the reading of the full resolution. After only 3 formal meetings, the Darien Board of Education reached an agreement with the Darien Education Association. The 3-year agreement, which starts July 1st, 2026, and continues until June 30th, 2029, has been ratified by the Darien Education Association and approved unanimously by the Board of Education. The Board of Ed had 2 main goals heading into this negotiation: recruitment and retention. The board wants to recruit talented young teachers to our district and keep the experienced educators in seat. These goals were accomplished by redesigning the salary schedule. The salary steps, as they're called, this denotes the years of experience, were smoothed out, meaning there is now a consistent dollar increase across the steps, which creates a level of consistency in pay and creates predictable growth and allows for more efficient financial forecasting. Here's a few highlights about the updated pay structure. In the new contract, the starting salary for a teacher in the Darien Public Schools with a master's degree will be $72,250. Step growth for teachers in steps 2 through 6 will be $3,500. Step growth for teachers in steps 7 through 14 will be $4,000. And step growth for teachers in the highest step, step 15, will be $2,900. The pay structure is organized not only by steps, but also by columns that denote education. Just as teachers can earn more income by years of teaching experience, they can also be eligible for more pay by moving into a higher column based on education. The new contract has 5 columns: BA, MA, MA plus 15 credits, which will add $1,000 to the equivalent master step, MA plus 30 credits, which will add $4,500 to the equivalent master step, and MA plus 60 credits, which will add $9,000 to the equivalent master's step. Note that, although the previous PhD column was eliminated, employees with a PhD will be placed in the MA plus 60 credit column and receive an additional $3,000 stipend. Also included in the new pay structure is a longevity payment, starting in year 2 of the contract. Teachers with 15 to 19 years of service in Darien will receive a $500 payment. Teachers with 20 to 24 years of service in Darien will receive a $750 payment, and teachers with 25 years or more service in Darien will receive a $1,000 payment. In year 3 of the contract, the aforementioned groups will receive an additional $250. The new teacher's contract focuses on redesigning the health insurance plan to drive long-term savings. For example, health insurance will be modified to increase deductibles for teachers to $3,000 and $6,000, up from $2,500 and $5,000. For employees hired after July 1st, 2026, a new prescription prior authorization program will be implemented. Other highlights of the contract include improved opportunities for professional learning. This is described as an in-service district-operated professional development program where staff can earn credits at no cost through the district-designed education outside of school hours. These credits may be used for salary advancement. In addition to in-house education opportunities, tuition reimbursement has increased to $75,000 and $500 per credit, up from $50,000 and $400 per credit respectively. Importantly, there will be an attendance incentive of $500 per semester for staff who have no more than 2 absences in each semester, excluding bereavement days or district-approved professional development days. The incentive is designed to improve on the district average absence of 12 days per school year. Cost of the incentive will be drawn off the substitute budget with improved attendance. Our finance and budget colleagues will speak further to this in a moment, but I wanted to include that the total 3-year wage increase is just over $7.1 million, or 13.95% over 3 years. There is a total 3-year anticipated insurance savings of over $2.5 million. As a result, the total 3-year wage increase is closer to 9.5%. It was the general opinion of our RTM Education Committee that the new teacher's contract is fiscally responsible while achieving some of the district's important goals, including, among other things, further investment in teachers' professional development. I will take a minute to note we had at least one member of our committee who felt strongly that teacher compensation should in the future be tied to in-class performance and learning outcomes, possibly implementing a performance bonus pool, rather than relying on a combination of years of experience and education. Further, the member expressed concern with the attendance incentive as it may not align well with building a high-performance culture within our school district. The member suggested Darien schools ought to incentivize teacher initiative rather than rewarding compliance with the employee attendance requirement. In summary, the new teacher's contract was agreed to quickly by both parties. It meets the needs of our school district. It was unanimously approved by the Board of Education. And on November 18th, 2025, with 10 of 14 members present, constituting a quorum of the RTM Education Committee, we voted to unanimously not reject this contract, and we urge the full RTM to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Eliza. Now speaking on behalf of the Finance and Budget Committee, it's not going to be Jack Davis. I see Peter Orfano stepping forward here.
Thank you, Seth. Good evening. I am Peter Orfanos, RTM District 6, and Vice Chair of the RTM Finance and Budget Committee. I want to thank Eliza for her comprehensive report, and we will try not to repeat any details that she's already addressed, with maybe one or two exceptions. While the contract is often referred to as the teacher's contract, the contract also covers all non-administrative certified staff, such as guidance counselors, social workers, school psychologists, physical therapists, and others in addition to the teaching staff. And as Liza mentioned, the overall 3-year increase is 13.9%, but when the two other aspects are considered, the health insurance savings and the estimated longevity cost, these savings bring the real cost of the contract down to 9.5%. As an important reminder for the body, we are voting not to reject the contract. If the contract is rejected, then the contract would go to arbitration, and towns like Darien do not do well in arbitration as a general matter. More importantly, this is a good contract. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee held a joint virtual meeting with the RTM Education Committee with Dr. Byrne, Rich Rudel, Marge Sion, Board of Ed Chair Robin Nelson, and Board of Ed Secretary Katie Lublin. We wish to thank them for their participation and contribution to our meeting. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee voted unanimously in favor of not rejecting this union contract and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Subbing in for Mr. Davis. Are there other committees who wish to report on this? Our town officials are going to speak later, but if they'd like to, any town officials have anything to say on the contract? No, I don't see any. Questions from the body? Any questions from the body on the contract? And any questions from electors of the town? That being said, we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. Opposed, please? And abstentions? Okay. Thank the district chairs for getting the votes quickly. Okay, we'll move on to now the State of the Town presentations, beginning with a presentation by the First Selectman, John Zagrodzky.
Thank you, Seth. Good evening, everyone. I will limit my comments to no more than 3 hours, so just as a general courtesy.
You'll go last next.
Yeah, right, after the room's cleared out. So I did want to thank the RTM for having these annual speeches. It does give us a chance to update you in more detail as to what's going on in the town, and preparing for it actually is helpful, forces me to rethink things and pull together everything in my mind. I will not speak for the other board chairs that will follow. So let's, without further ado, get started. So today I'm going to talk about just what I would call some hot topics that everyone has an interest in: Great Island flooding, traffic and parking, and the new developments that are going on in town. And then I've got some comments about looking ahead for 2026. I'll start off with Great Island. I think we made good progress this year. I think the key thing that we did was the delivery of the master plan by the Great Island Advisory Committee, which Monica chaired and for which I know I'm grateful and I know many people are. That master plan, I think, was a thorough document in several senses. One is that not only was it prepared with the assistance of some very qualified professionals, but it included a lot of input from a lot of people. And I know that at some level that was a long and protracted process, but anytime you have something like this, to gather adequate input and to make sure that it fully reflects the community's interests, I think is extremely important. And that's why, even though we might be slowing down our investments in Great Island, which I'll get to in a minute, the fact is that master plan, we can't forget, reflects the input of many, many, many people here in town, and ultimately, I think, their will in terms of where they'd like to see Great Island go in the future. So in addition to the master plan, we've also started work on 23A, which is the roadway from the end of Rings End Bridge up to the traffic circle. We've also had some benches and chairs delivered. Has anyone been out to see those? They're strategically placed. Pretty cool. Patty's seen them. I've been out there as well, and I know Monica spent a lot of time picking these things out. If you've not seen them, they're terrific. They fit perfectly out on the island. I'm really amazed. More of it will be put out when we get to warmer weather, but it really looks terrific. But as you know, when we presented what's called the Early Access Plan, which was the first phase of the master plan, and that included parking and invasives removal and clearing up some meadows, as well as the creation of some bathrooms at the what's called the greenhouse and the root cellar that's right next to it. We presented that to the Board of Selectmen. It passed the board unanimously, but when that was presented to the Board of Finance, they ended up tabling that recommendation, which is why it did not get to this body. Their concerns were that we were spending too much money, and they asked us to come back with something that was a little less aggressive. And so we have gone back and thought about that. And let me talk about kind of what we're going to do next with that. Basically, it's a scaled back version where we're not going to be doing the bathrooms that were envisioned, but we are going to focus on what I think is unanimous that everybody wants, which is we need parking on Great Island. There are too many people in this town who are mobility challenged, for whom a walk from either Pear Tree Point or the churches to get down there is just not acceptable. And so we're going to work to try to create that access as soon as possible. The problem is that to get that parking done right, it means that we're not going to have parking on the island this summer. And so one of the things that I want to make sure we focus on is the creation of a shuttle service. I've already spoken with Chris Jones, who runs At Home Darien. He is signed up and ready to go to help with senior transportation to the island. We're also going to try to do something where the town sponsors transportation for disabled or otherwise mobility challenged individuals. We will get that shuttle service up and running as soon as possible, certainly as soon as 23A is available and we can take people up to the island. So that is going to be our short-term solution to get everybody up to the island while we're waiting for this parking to be finished. So I thought it would take a minute to try some technology here, and if you'll bear with me. So this, Allison Graham, TV 79, Darien TV, thank you, Allison, she's here somewhere. Drone photography. So what you're seeing here is going up 23A from the end of Rings End Bridge up to the traffic circle, and it provides you kind of with a 20-foot aerial view of the work that's going on there. And so what you see is, this is what we're talking about when you have to create this two-lane road that allows for two-way vehicle access up to Great Island. We also have to create a sidewalk, because if there are going to be cars on that road, then people have got to have a place to walk that's going to be safe. And the tricky thing, this is now looking back, going back towards Rings End Bridge. You can see some of the work that we've had to do on the right side to create barriers to prevent soil erosion, but to create a nice flat and safe road surface. And that's been the work that they're doing right now. So I've been out to talk to Barry, who's the manager of the project, and a couple of times, and he assures me that the project is going well. All of this is going to be finished in the May timeframe, so it should be just in time for the warmer weather season, and then just in time for us to set up the shuttle service. So I think good progress with this project, but I wanted to do that drone shot so that you can actually see what's going on there. I think it's pretty cool. So next up, so what specifically are we doing for this scaled back early access? Basically, it boils down to parking. And so just as a quick review, this map shows the parking that was originally envisioned in the master plan. And you can see that where I've got labeled B there, those are all the spots that will have parking. There's also going to be bike access, as well as ADA parking and some overflow parking that's up there. So that's basically what we're going to create. There's going to be some infrastructure we've got to put in terms of utilities. We also need to work on lighting, and importantly, we do need drainage here. So it's not going to be as easy as just saying, oh, let's just throw down some gravel and start parking. It does need to be done carefully. There's pretty extensive permitting that's going to be required, and so having a process where we do it as inexpensively as possible, but do it responsibly, I think is going to be the right course to take. So that's what we're trying to do for early access. So one thing that we're not doing, just to be clear, is that is up there by the greenhouse. We are not doing bathrooms up there, so that's been taken out. We will have, just as we have now, portable porta potties, which will be our temporary access to bathrooms while we figure out what's going to be done in the future. But for right now, we're focused on parking. So like I said when I did the video about Great Island, we're breaking this into two parts. One of the things you got to have before you can start construction is you need to have design, schematics, you got to have permitting, and you've got to have bid documents to go out to contractors so that they can bid on this. And so that's what we have in process right now. We've put out an RFP, or a request for proposal, from firms that will be in a position to bid to help us prepare all those documents. Reed Hildebrand, I'm hopeful, will be one of them, but all of the usual suspects from Weston and Sampson to Redness and Mead and other firms that have worked with the town for many years, they're on top of this, and they will participate in that bidding process as well to make sure that this phase of work is done as economically as possible and for us to show you that that's the case. So those RFPs are out right now, and the bid due date for that is going to be January 15th, and we expect the work that is envisioned in that process to be ready to go, call it by midsummer. So that will then tee up the second piece of work or work stream, which is the construction work. And as I said, you've got to have bid documents to give to the contractors so that they can bid for this work to be done. We'll post those RFPs sometime in the late summer, and with any luck, we'll start construction that fall. And the idea is that we'll have the parking fully ready to go as early as possible in 2027. But as I said, it won't be ready this summer, which is why we'll have that shuttle service in place. We are going to need a couple of appropriations. One of them is just for the two work streams that I mentioned here, but there's one little piece that we're going to come back to you sooner, probably in January. It's going to be around $33,000, and these are for surveys or survey work that needs to be done in the area that we're considering. We're going to have that in any case, whether we do this now or it's delayed into the future. So it's, if we can get this appropriation for just that small piece of work in place sooner rather than later, that will speed up this process and maybe help us beat that 2027 deadline for parking. It's not something we want to delay. We're going to come back to you as soon as possible with a proposal for that, and I think we're going to talk about it at the Board of Selectmen meeting on the 15th this month, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so next topic I want to talk a little bit about is flooding projects. Those projects have been moving along, even though we've not had a lot of news. So as a reminder, the Board of Selectmen adopted some criteria for flooding projects, and that's important because you may just think, well, there's flooding here in town, let's go out and make an investment to remediate that. That's actually not the right way to approach it. It's actually important to make sure that for any flooding project, they meet these criteria. First, it can do no harm. You can't have a flooding project that just sends the flooding somewhere else into town. It's got to empty into a major body of water. Second is we can't spend millions of dollars to help 5 homeowners. It's got to help a critical mass of either homeowners or businesses. Third, there has to be real improvement. We can't just spend $1 million and improve flooding by a couple inches of water. And then lastly, we want to do all of our flooding projects to a standard of being able to withstand a 50-year storm event. So with those criteria in mind, we do have 2 projects that are ongoing. One is called the Salt Box Project. That's the one that's furthest along. We started that about 2.5 years ago, and where we are is it's going to benefit about 65 to 70 houses. A little hard to see on this map, but this is the area that starts with sort of Seagate right at the top of Holly Pond there and goes north up into Salt Box, but over to Du Bois and Coach Lamp and other streets. It's about 65 to 70 houses that will benefit from this, either through direct flooding relief or simply making sure that emergency vehicles have access to their homes in the event of a heavy rain. So it's definitely meets that criteria. The focus is there's a lot of crazy ways that this was built in the 1950s. You look at that, you say, what were they thinking? But it was what they were thinking, and we're going to have to replace a lot of this infrastructure that's underground. The design work for this is about 75% complete, and we have just submitted this for approval to both DEEP, and EPC here in town is going to pick this up pretty quickly. In terms of next steps, we're going to have to get appraisals for the easements that we'll need to do this work, since a lot of the work's going to be on private property, final construction documents, and fortunately, the cost estimate that we had, which is about $6.5 million net of a $500,000 state grant that we got, still looks to be reasonable at this point, so that's good news. This project should start construction sometime in the fall of 2027. The other project is Tilly Pond. That's our second project. This one started more recently in January of 2024. It's mainly to benefit business district area downtown. So when we had the floods in 2021, you'll recall that there were koi fish, got out of some pond somewhere. Anyway, it was down the post road, and I think Reese caught that, and anyway, I don't know if that's really true, but it's a good story in any case. So apocryphal maybe. In any case, there was a ton of flooding downtown. This project is meant to remediate that. So the design work is about 40% complete, and they're refining kind of final layout to identify conflicts, because anytime you do a flooding project, the as-built drawings for a lot of what's underground around here just don't exist or are of poor quality. And so you have to go through and survey that to make sure that you're not going to run into something or create some other problem that you have to fix later. So lots more work to do with Department of Transportation, since part of this flooding infrastructure is going to go under the Metro North tracks. It goes under there now, it's just going to be expanded. EPC permits, appropriation, it looks still like it's going to be about $3.5 million, and we're hoping to start that one a year later in the fall of 2028. So you folks that are worried about flooding, either for businesses or for the houses that are in that particular area, not to worry, we are working on it, and those projects are making good progress. Okay, so next up is traffic. I get a lot of calls about traffic. This is not a scene for traffic here where we are, but this could be a scene in our future. I looked up the worst traffic jam that I could find. This is a 26-lane highway, and I don't know if those people are still parked there or not. There is a perception that traffic is getting worse around here. There's a worry that new developments here in town are adding to the traffic. That's a point that's made. And there's a lot of further worry that this new state housing bill that Mr. Olvany will talk about shortly is going to make matters even worse. And so the question is any of that true, and what could we do to try to figure that out? So I've talked a few times about this Placer.ai, and that's a service that we subscribed to earlier this year, and what they basically have is anonymized, aggregated cell phone location data. And they've been able to create some algorithms that allow you to use that data to understand traffic, understand people flow, and where people are going. They did a demonstration project to us when they were selling us on it at Cherry Lawn Park, and we had a lot of data to show how many people were at the park, where they came from before they went to the park, where they were after they went to the park. It's really quite interesting. And so on my own, a child of the 20th century, I finally figured out how to run this program, and I have some insights that might help us think about traffic. So before I get to that, though, here on the right, one of the things the program has is that you can come in and set up what are called virtual traffic pins. And so I set one on the post road right there at the Stamford border, right in Giovanni's right in that area. There's another one at Leroy by the sports shop, and then there's another one over by Trader Joe's, just to pick the post road to say, all right, is post road traffic really getting worse or not? So let's take a look at some of those results. So what you see here, these are millions of what are called impressions. So an impression is any time that the cell phones pass by that location. It can be the same cell phone that passes back and forth, but what they've done is they've tried to aggregate that with a consistent algorithm over time. So what you see here is those three locations, Stamford Line, Leroy and Post Road, and Trader Joe's. What you see here is millions of impressions for all of calendar 23, all of calendar 24, and the last 12 months. It's basically November to November for 2025, so close enough for 2025. What you see is the Stamford Line actually has, that location on the Post Road has significantly more traffic than it did in 2023. Much less so for Leroy and the Post Road, and actually a slight decline at the location around Trader Joe's. So it's a little complicated how this data is compiled, but based on our work with them, and I've spent quite a bit of time with them, the algorithms that they use do give us a reasonably accurate picture of how this traffic is trending. So what you see is that traffic based on this data, again, just since 2023, is up but only modestly. And it looks like the Stamford line traffic is what's creating most of it, most of the increase. Maybe that's because they finished the bridge work that's over there by Giovanni's within this time frame. So what can we learn a little bit more about all this? Well, if you break it down a little bit, you can actually get data from this system that will show where the cell phones live that are crossing these traffic pins. And so they can tell, say, if I had my phone out, they would know that I'm a Darien resident, and I would count as somebody who lives in Darien if I passed that traffic pin. But they also know that for everybody else. So in this case, what you see based on the analysis, and this shows the change in impressions from that same time period, 2023 through 2025, broken out by town. So what I did was I picked the top 4. It's Darien, Stamford, Norwalk, and interestingly, New York City. And what you see is actually about 54% of the increase, and this is the sum over across all 3 traffic pins. So I've added them all up. Shows the changes over that time period. More than half of the increase is actually coming from cell phones based in Stamford. And if you add the, quote, all other, it's nearly 80%, about 77%. So what this shows you is that when we talk about traffic, yes, traffic is getting modestly heavier, but it looks like most of the traffic is not coming from Darien residents. It's actually coming from Stamford. And if you think about that in terms of the housing that they're building, those guys have added about 4,500 units of housing just in the last 5 years. In fact, they've added more than 15,000 housing units in Stamford in the last 15 years. And with that new plan that they just passed, has anybody been reading about that? Pretty controversial. They're going to add a lot more housing density. And so when we talk about impact on traffic, part of the problem here is that a lot of our traffic is being driven by Stamford and potentially in the future Norwalk traffic as all those developments come online and those people are going between those 2 towns. So think about that in terms of going forward. I'm going to be doing some more analysis on that, and as I come up with more interesting insights from this that might help us think about traffic or congestion management in town, I will let you know. I mean, just pause for a moment. A child of the 20th century did all that. I'm kind of impressed, but it's amazing. I did ask Dr. Byrne, I said, can we get a high school kid to come help the disabled here? And I didn't get any help, I guess. Scared them away. Okay. In terms of traffic prospects, I'm not going to lie to you. This is a real problem. The Greenwich Westport corridor, that I-95 corridor, for 2024 was rated as the worst traffic corridor anywhere in the 50 states in the United States. Without major changes, the peak travel times through downtown Stamford across that area are expected to increase by 9 minutes each way. And if you've had to drive any of that traffic lately, it's pretty bad. I was up at Mohegan Sun for a conference the other day, and I came back in the morning. I think I left at 7 o'clock. I got from Mohegan Sun to Bridgeport in about 32 minutes, and from Bridgeport to exit 11 in an hour and 45 minutes. It is absolutely appalling, and it's getting worse and worse. And this move to make housing more dense, and we're going to solve our housing problem by densifying housing here in Fairfield County. I'm not saying that that's bad, but I'm telling you right now it's going to make matters worse. My view is that I get the need for affordable housing. It's important, but this whole densification effort is going to bring traffic that the likes of which we've just not seen, and it's going to reduce the quality of life for everybody. So I'm very focused on this. All of my elected official colleagues are as well. And we will do what we can to raise the attention for that. So when people ask you what your issue is with housing, I think a fair-minded person would say every town needs to contribute to that in some way, and I do believe that. But they are not doing enough to address traffic, I'm telling you right now. And so if you had to send a message to legislators and anyone else who's in a position to make decisions on that, we need a better plan, and it's important. A parking update. One of so many favorite topics. Let's talk about that. So last year I talked about commuter parking, and one of the things I mentioned was that we were working with this company called Premium Parking, which runs parking at the Sono Mall. You've seen them around. And so we spent quite a bit of time with them and came up with I think a comprehensive proposal. It had a few drawbacks. One was they wanted $279,000 a year to do that, and after I was defibrillated when they told me that, some other problems became apparent with that. Part of it was that it was impersonal, because you may get a parking ticket, but the reality is you'd like to talk to somebody about that. And they had a very automated and corporate and a big city approach to that in my judgment didn't work well for Darien. Plus it was too much change. They had all kinds of automated cameras, we had new apps, we had new procedures, and especially given the cost, I decided to pull the plug on that. We've not given up. New Canaan just adopted some better cameras. One of the things that I did was I've been out actually in the parking lots with our traffic enforcement professionals, seeing how this works. Some of the tickets that you may have gotten on your windshield were put there by yours truly, because I wanted to see what it's like to scan these plates to check compliance with our parking rules. It's not terrible. The cameras and the little gun that they have there to check that, it's not very effective, but the good news is New Canaan just got a new set of these cameras, and I heard a report this week, or last week, they love them. They think it's great. And so we could configure it to where when you get that license plate, it tells you right away whether it has a permit or they've paid their daily parking or you need to give them a ticket. I think we could retire our hanging tags because I've been through and I've watched them do this. It's not too bad, but let's get that better camera in place. So I'm hopeful that maybe we can pull that trigger sometime early next year. So that's commuter parking. We also got a lot of complaints about congested downtown parking. The culprit here is all this construction, not just for Corbin Drive, but also for the Darien train station. It really has screwed up parking pretty bad downtown. The good news is that will abate soon. Sometime in the next 12 to 18 months, all this work should be finished. Did everybody know this? So the Corbin parking, there's not just the parking underground, there's the parking garage, and there's lot parking behind that. There's going to be 85 surface parking spaces and 340 in the garage that they've set up, that's all set up for retail. And if you compare that with the amount of parking we have in our other lots downtown, it is a significant improvement in downtown parking. So I think once Corbin 2 comes online, we're going to see parking improve quite a bit. It's also going to get a lot better when the Darien train station work finishes, which again looks like it's scheduled for June of this year, and that will solve a lot of problems. The last thing I'd say about this is I thank you for approving the acquisition of the Coons parking lot, now Leroy North, as we're calling it. 293 spaces there. I think that's a very good place to put a parking garage, and I would love to see that become a parking garage for employees. So you could set that up for commuters downstairs like they are now, and have the upper floor or two set up for employee parking for downtown. That would free up significant parking in our downtown parking lots, which are consumed by employees today. So more to come on that. We'll think through and see if we can come up with a reasonable proposal, but I think there's potential there. And the last thing that's lurking on parking, anybody been to the library on a busy day or a conference? Who has trouble finding parking there? Okay, who is parking probably where he should not be parking, which is me. I think we're going to need a parking garage at the library, so we're going to come back to you with some plans or thoughts about that, but I don't see any other way to solve that particular problem at the library, which has gotten pretty serious. Okay, new developments, a few other things I want to talk about here. This is a quick summary from a newsletter I put out where I talked about the trends in new developments. So this is the number of multifamily housing units that have been added in Darien in the last 25 years. And what you see is a total of a little over 1,100 of those units, of which about 300 is affordable, and you can see the ones that are under construction today. This seems like a lot, and actually it is when you compare with the base single-family count of residences here in town, which is about 6,600 right now. That doesn't grow very much because anytime there's a new house, it's actually the result of a tear down. We don't have a lot of space for new houses. So this is a real change in the makeup of our housing, but it's provided a lot of variety and a lot of options for people to live in something that's a little less complicated. Does anybody know people who've lived in these apartments? Like you've moved to one of these apartments. They love them. They really do. And I think it's provided some great flexibility for people who want to stay in town but don't want to own a house. I think we're managing it, but I do think that infrastructure concerns remain an issue. And I look at this densification of housing generally. We start to get up to the edge on sewer infrastructure, our schools, our parks. Do we really want those things to become a lot more crowded? I think we need to take a step back and make sure that if we're thinking about housing, whether it's being forced on us or whether we want to do it, are all these other ancillary things keeping up with that? Schools, parks, roads, infrastructure, all that needs to be measured in concert. Because if we build too much and we put pressure on those things, again, it's a quality of life issue. Does anybody want to get up and say, I don't want to go to the parks today, they're too crowded? Did anybody want to tell your kids that? I don't. So that's something that I want to make sure that we focus on. I'll let Mr. Olvany comment on this, but once you get through Thorndale Circle, which is the last big development that's in progress right now, I don't see a lot of other places where we're going to get mega developments here in town. By mega, I mean 150 plus multifamily units. A lot of those places have been kind of built out right now, so let's see. But I'm hopeful that once we get through this digestion, that there's not a whole lot on the near term that might create significant additional housing in Darien, but let's see. Here's a shot of, this is, if anybody's seen it, which I've kind of not seen this is what Thorndale Circle looks like. Again, a drone shot there, and you can see just how much work has already been done in terms of taking down those buildings. But that's the highway right over there, and just to the right that you'll see in a minute is the Post Road. Again, this is about 175 units that they're going to be putting in there, as well as, I forget exactly, Jeremy, you remember the number of affordable units that are part of that? Call it 15 or 20 maybe 25. And this is scheduled to be completed in the next two and a half years, I think. So that's just gives you a sense of what all that work looks like, but that is, they are moving ahead with alacrity. Okay, so to wrap things up, just looking ahead, some focus areas for 2026. This new housing bill, Mr. Olvany is going to talk about that in detail. I won't steal his thunder, other than to say that the passage of this housing bill does change things. Elections matter. The folks who passed this have significant majorities in Hartford, and this is what they wanted, and they've got it. And it's going to change things for us in Darien. The good news, though, is that there's a lot that we can do to prepare for this. He's going to go through some zoning changes. There's actually a meeting, is it Westcog next week? It's where planning professionals from our Council of Government are going to get together. There are some very specific things we can do with our zoning regulations that will help us manage and mitigate this. They've got to be in place by July 1st. And the COG is already on the ball. And so I think in general, with all of this planning, we're going to keep you as informed as possible. We're going to cooperate where we can in a way that works for Darien, but in any case, we're on it, and we will try to manage it as best as we can. Pedestrian infrastructure, we're ready to go with the Pedestrian Infrastructure Advisory Committee version 2. This will be a continuation of the committee that was chartered 10 years ago to think about pedestrian infrastructure. So my next step is I'll take it to the Board of Selectmen on the 15th to get it officially approved, have a charter in place, and get organized so we can put that committee in place for early 2026. Pretty important. A lot of people call about sidewalk infrastructure, and having a committee in place to do real work to help advance that, I think, is a great idea. I'm going to be producing a video about how I think this should work based on a lot of conversations I've had, as well as a professional consultant that we've hired that would work with this committee and help them shape their recommendations for sidewalks. In terms of a budget, haven't thought about that yet. Are we going to spend $10 million on sidewalks? No, we are not. Are we going to spend more? That's entirely likely. But the main thing is to have the work of this committee come up with some thoughtful recommendations that the Board of Selectmen and then the RTM, can vote to approve to accelerate the pace of pedestrian infrastructure. It's really something that a lot of people want. And I think if we do a good job to roll out some suggestions that are financially responsible, I think we'll make some good progress on that. My only caveat is keep in mind there's a discrete number of companies that actually do this. And so even if we had unlimited funding, there's only so fast that you can actually put sidewalks in simply because, well, you've got weather and you've got limited providers of this type of contracting work. Last thing is I've mentioned to rules last month that I would like to embark on some updates to our town charter and to our ordinances. The key theme of all that is efficiency. We've got a lot of people who volunteer in town government, but some of our committee structures and the way we do business on really many, many things hasn't been updated in decades. And I think now's the time to try to take all of 2026 to think through all of that. I'll give a more detailed presentation about what I'm thinking about, but the main thing to point out is that this is an RTM responsibility. The Board of Selectmen does not make charter changes, you guys do. And so what we're going to do is try to orchestrate a process for gathering feedback to provide that to much of you so that you can evaluate it and come to a vote as to the recommendations that make the most sense. 2026 is going to be a very busy year for the RTM. I will keep you as busy as I can and as much as you can stand. But I think this will be a very interesting process, hopefully not controversial, but something that is aligned with that idea of efficiency and this thought, which is if we can make it work better for all our volunteers, they're going to want to be involved in government more. And so let's try to do that. I think it'll actually benefit everybody in this room if we can manage. Last point I'd like to make is about communications. We have no functioning press here in Darien. Normally elected officials will come in and say, thank God I don't have to deal with the press, but in speaking with my good friend Mr. Cameron, both he and I disagree with that. I would much rather be challenged than to just sit here and make all these decisions myself. And that's why Mr. Burke over here and Sarah on the Board of Selectmen, I mean, they have challenged me regularly and are dear friends of mine, and thank God for that, because when they do, we get to better decisions. And so one of the great inventions that we've had here, well, a couple of them, one is we have the town newsletter, but in an effort to create news or get people's reactions or just supply information about what's going on so that you guys can understand it, I did launch my own newsletter about a year ago, and so I've now done a lot of them. And I try to write on topics that I think you would find, or really anyone who's watching would find informative, because you learn a little bit more about how the town works, either town government or just stuff going on in town. So I pay close attention to a lot of that, and I will try to generate as much of that content as possible. If you have ideas or you have questions about stuff you don't get, let me know. I have a newsletter every 2 weeks. I will write about it and try to help everybody. If you've not subscribed, please do that. I'm not trying to promote my newsletter other than to say we don't have a free press in town. And so Jim and I are trying to make our own press, and, well, this is about all I can think of. Now, he did have, we have social media. I do a lot of posting on that. Not a natural thing for me to do, but I am doing more, so please follow that. And then finally, Darien TV. Jim had the great idea of this Ask the First Selectman series that we do. So every once in a while, he'll call up with half a dozen or a dozen questions from people all over town. He'll tell me the topics, but I don't get to know the questions. He films it live, and then he produces it, and I don't get to edit that. So pop quiz, I love that. Anytime you've got a question or an issue or complaints, I don't care what it is, please call me. We do want to be responsive to that, and I think we will provide as much content or answer as many questions as you guys can pose. So please do that, and until we actually have a functioning press in town, we'll do our best to be as open and as honest as possible. I will take any questions, anytime, in any forum. Okay. People ask me if I'm still enjoying the job. I think I am, but I was reminded of this cartoon. Maybe I'm just a little naive about just, how much this is, but who misses the Far Side cartoons? I certainly do. So anyway, Gary Larson. I heard he disappeared on some mountain up in Denver and shut off contact with the world, but a great talent. Anyway, I guess finally, a couple of thanks I want to do. I know Robin's going to do this, but I did want to thank Jill McCammon, the immediate past chairman of the Board of Education. She was a good friend and did an amazing job. But congratulations to our new leaders, Robin Nelson, who's the board chair, Dr. Eric Byrne, our new superintendent, as well as Bill Vrendenberg and John Dunn, the new members of the Board of Education. I know from afar, frankly afar, how difficult that job is, and I appreciate all that they are about to do. Thank you also to the town hall staff led by Jen Charneski, who's our town administrator. I will again put the town hall staff, and I mean everybody here in town hall, police, fire, EMS, everybody against any town here in Connecticut. I am regularly amazed and gratified by what they do. And finally, thanks to all of you who serve. You're all volunteers. You could be at home doing something different than watching me or my other colleagues talk tonight, and you guys are the ones who make this town work. I'll close with a quick story. So everybody knows Santa Claus, Joe Warren. So Joe Warren was out Sunday before last at the lighting of the tree at the Darien Sports Shop, like he has for many, many, many years. And it was terrific because even in the rain, he was there under a little tent that the Parks and Rec team had set up to greet those children. And by God, they were all lined up waiting to pass along their wishes. Did you know that 4 days before that, his wife passed away? Patty passed away suddenly and without suffering, but it was very sad. But Joe Warren was still there on Sunday greeting those kids. So this past Friday was the funeral service for Pat over at St. Luke's. I went there, and a ton of other people went there. An amazing outpouring, terrific eulogy by Reverend Ryan Fleener, and really just a very nice service. And afterwards, there was a reception over at the Norton Fire Department, and I went over there as well. What do you say to Joe Warren? I'm really sorry about this. It's really something. I went up to him, and guess what? I didn't say a thing. He immediately saw me, came over, and he says, well, thank you for coming. And he says, you know, she didn't suffer, but you know what? Look at me. I am the most blessed man I know. Look at everybody who came out for me. Look at my friends and family. Look at all these people that I've known for 50, 60, 70 years. This is my family. I've got nothing to regret. It was amazing to hear somebody say that. And what it taught me and what it reminded me is that everybody in this room has got something that's giving them a hard time. That certainly I have that myself. But you know, when you can take a step back And do like Joe did and say, take a moment and be thankful for what you do have. Think about the things that have gone well in your life. Think about the things that are so great. I promise you it'll change your mindset. And when Joe Warren told me that, you know what? It kind of reset my own mind, and I felt a lot better after having talked to him. After having talked to somebody who just lost his wife, I felt better. And you know, that's the right mindset to offer. I thank you for your indulgence. I wish you Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year. God bless.
Well, thank you very much, John. Certainly not going to be dull during the coming year, is it? It's exciting times, and we're moving right along. Couple of announcements. One, Sandy Savage is our nominee for the Treasury Point. And the Board of Ed contract, 25-27 item, passed 75 in favor, 1 abstention. Now, Steve Olvany, Chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Welcome.
On top of it? There we go. Like this? Yeah. Okay, great. You're all set.
Cool, thank you. That guy's good. Way to go, there he is. I'm not as good as him, but I'm gonna give it a shot. Very polished man. Congratulations, John, good job. Thank you, Seth, members of the RTM, my fellow elected officials, and the people of Darien watching on TV 79. Good evening. I am Stephen Olvany, the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I also call it the Darien Real Estate Department. I just like real estate. That's what I've been doing my whole professional career. I've been on the P&Z for about 12 and a half years. I started mid-2013, and I'm excited here to be with you tonight to deliver my 7th State of the Town address. One year I did take skipped it because I had COVID, and the vice chairman gave it, but I'm going to do it again. This is actually one of the funnest nights that I have. As you can see by the, it's up there too. As you can see by the title of my address, it's we're going to take a little bit of a different approach. Rather than give you another typical speech, I thought we would reach out to all RTM members and find out what is on your mind. So we assembled a number of questions, and I also had a few common questions that I hear from our constituents. Every year I try to put a title or a theme to the speech. And this year's theme is, we're almost done. Okay? We're almost done. Don't worry about it. I know he said a lot. We're almost done. Trust me. First off, thank yous to everybody. Before I start, I want to start with the first question. I just want to acknowledge all my fellow members and the time and effort they put through 2025. I have 5 fellow members on the Planning and Zoning Commission. There are 8 members on the Zoning Board of Appeals. Am I supposed to be moving this?
Yeah, just now. You have to check the space bar or the arrow key. Just tap the arrow key for the next slide. There you go.
There we go. All right, cool. New technology. I don't have any drones, sorry. We're going to try that for next year. Where do we go? There are 8 members on the EPC and 9 members on the Architecture Review Board. In total, we have 31 volunteers on these boards, plus the Blight Committee. I'm here to represent all the boards and the commissions tonight. We also have a great staff. Just like John said, it is led by Jeremy Ginsburg, who does a fantastic job. They are all seasoned, qualified, and credentialed planning and zoning members. Whatever credentials they're in, like planners or engineers or water people, they have the credentials to do that. All of our boards are always looking for new volunteers. I gotta get it again, I think, right? Bingo. All of our boards are looking for new volunteers, so if you do want to serve on one of our boards, please let me know by email or town hall or text messages. A lot of people do text me now. Somebody thinks I'm Daniel. I don't know who that guy is, but I keep getting a lot of emails for Daniel. As I mentioned, I've reached out to find out what's on everyone's mind. Of course, Darien residents are not usually shy with their voices and their concerns. And you know, by fellow commissioners and I, we do hear a lot of concerns. And we also are given a lot of thanks and accolades. We do listen to you at the end of the day. There's nothing that gets done in this town that does not have public input. So let's start with our first question. Bingo, look at that, this is fun. What's the result of the accessory dwelling units ADA regulation that was passed by the zoning commission in mid-2024? The ADU regulation took effect about a year and a half ago, and today gives us the opportunity to reflect on the results. So far, we've seen about 17 approvals, which is about one a month. All the approvals have been for one-bedroom units of less than 1,000 square feet, which is the maximum that's allowed under the ADU regulations. About 2/3 of them are attached to buildings, and 1/3 are in detached separate structures, meaning a pool house, a garage, something like that. Bingo, there you go. They range in size from 280 square feet to 988 square feet, with most of them being in the 600 to 700 square foot range. My apartment in New York City, which was a one-bedroom, was 832 square feet. So they're smaller than my apartment at home. The size of them is about a 3-car garage. What I do want to add is that most of them are for multi-generational living. There's a lot of people have their parents come in from wherever they live, Long Island, Queens, Brooklyn, upstate Connecticut, and now the grandparents are living with the children. There are a few that are for rental, not that many, but a lot of it is independent living. There was one woman that came in, I remember, she lives by herself, and her son was a fireman in town. She wanted to put an ADU in her house so her son could live in the house and take care of her. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. We had to work really hard to make sure it worked and fit our plan, but that's what we did. And there's a lot of examples like that. The Darien Planning Commission will continue to monitor this regulation, but it appears it's been successful in creating small one-bedroom units in town without impacts to our single-family residential neighborhoods. Darien's ADU regulation was clear in requiring sufficient on-site parking for the ADUs, and that all the ADUs meet the zoning setbacks and the requirements for the zones that they are in. Next question. Can you give us an update on the 2026 Plan of Conservation and Development? As required by state statute, the commission is required to complete a plan every 10 years, and while our 2016 plan has served us well, it is time to evaluate where we are and where we hope to be in the future and continue to conserve and redevelop. Plan of Conservation and Redevelopment. We're about halfway through the process, which started in mid-2024. We're almost done. As you may recall, there was a public outreach session at the Mather Center in September of '25. We had a nice turnout and gave our consultants valuable information to begin preparing and the plan with the commission. The plan's a blueprint for the future. It starts with a review of the demographics in town, with the data, what goes on here, the infrastructure, and what's under construction in the future. The Planning and Zoning Commission will continue to spend time, about 1 or 2 meetings every month, with our consultants from H&H, which is named Hardesty in Hanover. They've been doing our traffic studies in Darien for at least 20 years, I think. We expect the draft to be completed by May of 2026, and it goes into effect in June or July of 2026. And once it's adopted, it will be a blueprint for future conservation and growth in the community. There we go. Okay. What new commercial tenants will we see in 2026? There's a lot of development in town. Everybody can see it every single day when we drive by. As part of Heights Crossing, we have a new garden catering, which is fantastic. And a quick shout out to them. If you go there for dinner between 5 and 7, it's a special. They take about 30% off the bill. I've checked it out. I thought the guy was wrong. We also have Sharky's, which is a little haircut store, which is actually a chain for kids. There is Heights Wine and Spirits. I went there and bought my wife a bottle of champagne recently. They're really good. The guy gave me 2 plastic champagne glasses, which I thought was nice. We have Goddard School, which is taking pressure off of our schools for the little kids. Chipotle's coming soon, and the other one, a lot of people, if you haven't been there yet, to Raphael's Bakery, place is off the charts. And in 2026, because it's really cold, we're going to have a new place called the Milkshake Factory opening up. As part of the Corbin District, there's going to be Roan, which is, everyone knows about Roan is, that's Lululemon for boys, for me. We also have Tati Bakery and Cafe, Hanuki, which I think is a sushi place. My kid likes sushi. FP Movement, which is going to be another gym. Framebridge, I'm not really sure what that is, but David Genoese will probably tell you that. Millie's Restaurant, and Go Hana, which is another restaurant. Note that in the summer of 2026, the second phase is scheduled to be completed with the retail and restaurants opening. The first thing that's going to open at Corbin is the commercial retail space, commercial space, and then the office space. The big tenants in town that is a bonus for Darien is Aon Insurance is moving to town, and also McKinsey Consulting, which I think John is a alumni of McKinsey. That's why he's so smart. We love office tenants in town. They come here during the day, they go to the restaurants, they go have lunch, they have dinner maybe, and then they go home. And a lot of people that work at these companies, including John, live in town. The thing that John was talking about earlier, and I want to stray a little bit for Jeremy, Darien is supposed to be 20 minutes from Greenwich, right? It's supposed to be. In the morning, it takes about 45 minutes to get there. A lot of the tenants from Greenwich are moving to Darien because the commute got so bad. That's why it's happening. So when he was talking about traffic going back on I-95, if everybody that used to work in Greenwich, and we're actually out of office space here, moves to Darien, the traffic is going to go down. Okay? I can talk about that till I'm blue in the face. In the fall of 2026, the apartments will become available for occupancy in phases. I don't think Bay Waters put any of those spaces on the market for lease yet, but I do know that phase 1 is all done. I also am pleased to note that earlier in 2026, Bay Water will be installing new power lines and data lines in the back of the Corbin District by I-95 to prepare for the installation of the new sidewalk, street lighting, and furniture along the Post Road and Corbin Drive. Okay, yep. Other projects that we do have, or tenants that we do have, is the lady was really cool. She came about a year ago. She's a chocolatier. She's going to next door to Heights Pizza. It's called how do you pronounce it? There you go, chocolatier. She's going to be downtown, right? We also have the Cloud 10 Car Wash, which is near the Norwalk border, which is under construction. Another one that I think is really cool is we have a Mr. Falafel and Gelato shop going into Good Wives. They're going to be open from 10 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. So like New Canaan, we follow New Canaan, you can go get your gelato after you have dinner. The other tent that's moving is Jenny Montgomery. Is at 800 Post Road now. They're moving into Corbin, and that space has already been backfilled by a, what's the name of the place called? Wondrous. a child's gym. That made the papers the other day, and you might see that coming up soon. So we really don't have a lot of excess space, but we have a lot of stuff that's coming in here that's great. What else we got? Next. Do I go through? Oh. Okay, good. What do we see in terms of development in the new year or 2 years ahead? Excuse me, we do have a good idea of the project that are in the pipeline and those that are approved in the last year or two. The projects underway now include Cedric Lofts, which should be completed in mid-2026. That's the building on the corner of Cedric Avenue and Old Kings Highway, right at the traffic circle. It's going to consist of 18 condominiums, and they're all one-bedrooms. That is right before you go into Goodwives Shopping Center, which actually changed its name. The next one on the list is 3 Parklands Drive. That's scheduled to be completed in mid-2027. It's a new building that replaced a former office building that was almost vacant, adjacent to Selleck Woods, Dunlap Woods, and then the Selleck Senior Housing Project. That's going to be 57 brand-new units and a mix of 1- and 2-bedroom units. I bet you a nickel that's going to be a older demographic class, where it's located and the quietness of the area. Next, we have Thorndale Circle, which is scheduled for completion in 2027. That is what John showed you. It's the old Nielsen's project that was in the back there. That's 175 dwelling units going to be there in 5 buildings. What they did is they're replacing 5 basically vacant or Class B office buildings with 5 new apartment buildings. And it's 50 affordable units, right? Is it 20? It's 25 affordable units, yeah. It's 25 affordable units. As part of that, they're also going to renovate a couple of the medical office buildings in there. There's a medical office building that's on the corner, which has got an imaging center in it, and the other office building that's next to it where actually Jerry's office is. It's a total redevelopment of the former office park, like I said, behind Nielsen's Florist. The one office building is remaining, and the other office building had been demolished, and you saw the construction there. It will be a mix of 1- and 2-bedroom units. ARB did a great job reviewing that project. The developer is Tremont Crow, and a lot of it's going to look really nice when it's finished. The other one, that's under review right now is called Heights Corners. That's being reviewed by the P&Z Commission and the ARB Commission. That is a donut that's in the middle of a hole on Heights Road between Federal and Heights Crossing. The proposal is for 3 properties. It was 3 properties. It was 2 vacant buildings and a little lot that I was called the black lot. And there was a guy that had his lawnmower equipment in there. That's where he was. Those are being combined on either side, technically combined by zoning on either side of Edgerton Street. The brick building and plus the long-time parking lot. The Architectural Review Board is still looking at it. And it'll be a nice mixed-use building with commercial on the ground floor and apartments above once approved. It's supposed to, right now, slated for 20 total units. All of our housing in town by regulation is 14% affordable. You can either put the affordable units on-site, off-site, or pay the town a fee in lieu. Relative to the fee in lieu, we do have a bunch coming in now. I think the next one comes from, the Cedric Lofts. There's over $1 million in the Darien Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which is a big deal. The other one that's being reviewed right now, the old gas station that is on the corner of Cedric and the Post Road, was a Shell station. That's proposed to be a new gas and convenience store. It's directly across the street from 800 Post Road. John alluded to it earlier about traffic. We're looking hard at that one because of traffic. It's a great idea. It's taking down 2 buildings, putting up 1. The square footage, the total square footage is declining, but we're still in the process of looking at that one. We already talked about Clyde Now Car Wash. And the other one that's kind of really cool too is 76 Tokenique Road. That building was vacant for 5 years. Guy built it a long time ago for his own use. They thought about putting a Montessori school in there. It recently sold. They're going to put, I think, 4 apartments on the second floor and commercial space on the ground floor in the basement. So that's another one that's going to come back to life. There are a bunch of other renovations that we could talk about, the medical office buildings and whatnot, but I think you guys got the flavor of what's going on. There we go. What's the commission doing to encourage more pedestrian-friendly town and encourage more bicycle use, and how we get more crosswalks? This one I really actually like. As part of each application for multifamily housing or commercial development submitted, the Planning and Zoning Commission reviews traffic and parking. We also send this over to the police department and the fire department for them to review it also. One of the topics discussed is how each part can address pedestrian and be bicycle friendly. For example, the commission is encouraging more bike racks and bicycle storage within the larger buildings. Some people put it in there automatically, some people don't. We tell them to put it in there and say it's a really, really, really good idea if you do this. Lo and behold, it happens. New sidewalks are being required to be constructed by the developers when and where appropriate. This will supplement what John was talking about, was the annual sidewalk program that's put forth by the town every single year. You may have recently seen the brand-new sidewalks on the east side of Corbin Drive, and those are actually really nice, on the south side of West Avenue and on Heights Road between Hollow Tree Ridge Road and Norotan Avenue. All those, the one that goes from Heights Road to Hollow Tree Ridge Road goes all the way up to Middlesex Middle School. And if you go there in the morning, you see kids flowing up and down Hollow Tree Ridge Road going in there. And if now we have Chipotle and Garden Catering opening, you're going to see half the town's middle school kids hanging out there after school. So you may want to put a monitor over there. I didn't tell you that. The decision to where and when to put crosswalks falls on the local traffic authority, which is called the LTA, or the Police Commission for Town Roads. On state roads, the commission, and state roads, any decision on crosswalks falls on the state of Connecticut. David Genovese, as part of Corbin District, did get a crosswalk that's going to be lighted on the Post Road. It's a mid-block one. We're requiring the developer to put, if approved, one on Edgerton Street between Edgerton, which is Heights Crossing, and then Federal, which is Daring Commons. The roads, the following roads are state roads: are the Boston Post Road, Tokenique Road, which is Route 130, Hoyt Street, which is 106, and then Mansfield Avenue, which is 124. There we go. Why does the Planning and Zoning Commission allow builders and developers to put forth amendments to zoning regulations or maps? Some people really don't like that when they change the zoning codes, but state statute allows anyone to put forth an amendment to the zoning regulations or the zoning map within a community. The statute requires the Planning and Zoning Commission to hold public hearings on an application and make a formal decision. The standard that the commission must use is to whether the application is founded to be consistent with the town plan of conservation and development. That's what we have to make sure it makes to be able to approve it. Sometimes the Planning and Zoning Commission will put forth an application itself. Recently, the town did do the accessory dwelling units, as I noted earlier, but also we did a new regulation for stormwater management regulations. The proposal was to modify Section 880, which a lot of people talk about in our town, which provides stricter regulations for builders and developers and property owners to manage stormwater on the site of their own properties. Another recent amendment put forth by the commission itself was to ban all cannabis businesses in the town of Darien. The commission also changed its regulations when obligated via the new state statutes. For example, in 2021, the governor signed Public Act 21-29 into law with an effective date of October 1st, 2021. That law prohibits zoning regulations from establishing minimum floor area that is greater than minimum floor area that is greater than the minimum floor set forth in the applicable zoning in town already. What that means is that we had a regulation that you couldn't have apartments that were like less than 900 square feet. We actually changed that to make it less than 500 square feet. The reason behind that is a 900 square foot apartment is more expensive than a 500 square foot apartment. There aren't a lot of them in town, but there are a couple of buildings that do that. Where are we up to now? Yeah, this is a fun one. Wouldn't it be great if we can get some of the power lines in town buried? Yeah, it would be. It's actually required, but it's a really expensive endeavor. And it was most recently accomplished over at Grove Street, and that's about 25 years ago. Next up, the underground lines will be now run on the Boston Post Road along the Corbin block. In this instance, the developer, which is Baywater Properties, is coordinating the project, which will make a beautiful improvement to our downtown. If you look at the picture, you can see those power lines all over the place. It looks like spaghetti. So that's going to be something that's cool. John talked a little bit about that. Why does Norwalk and Stamford have so many smoke shops, but Darien has none? I wonder why. It came clear, about a year ago, it came clear to Planning and Zoning Commission members that there was no interest in having smoke shops in Darien. The commission put forth a regulation change to ban smoke shops, vape shops, and tattoo parlors throughout the town. You're never going to see a tattoo sign in a window in our town. You're also not going to see a vape shop sign. That amendment was adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission about a year ago. Okay. What role does the state of Connecticut play in Darien's zoning regulations? John mentioned that a little bit. As I noted, the Planning and Zoning Commission must react to laws that are passed on the state level. This was the case in 2021 with Public Act 21-29, which no longer allowed the minimum floor sizes for apartments. The commission had to react to that by eliminating the law that we had. In 2023, the state legislature passed 23-142, which limited how local regulations can treat in-home childcare. Thus, the commission also was obligated to amend the regulation on that case. This was also the case when the state allowed cannabis businesses in 2021, which gave rise to a larger number of smoke shops and vape shops throughout the state of Connecticut. At the time, the Darien Planning and Zoning Commission felt that it was needed to respond by banning smoke shops and vape shops as well as the cannabis businesses. The way that was done is we did a moratorium for 1 year, then I think we did it for 2 years, let the dust settle, and then after the fact, we said, that's okay, we don't need them here. Where am I? Yep, there we go, so I said that already. Another example that the town must comply with is outdoor dining for restaurants as of right. We actually really like that a lot, but the state came in and said that you have to allow it everywhere. You hear about that in the papers for New York City. They're having issues with that, but we're actually kind of cool. We're kind of in good shape here. But as you can see, the state legislature gets more involved in local zoning on a variety of topics. This is similar to the next question submitted to me, which relates to the recent bill that passed at the state legislature last month relative to housing, which affects all communities in the state of Connecticut. Is it done here? Yes, okay. Is the state aware of what we're doing here in town? The answer to that is yes. In 2024, Governor Mott came to visit the Corbin district, and at the same time, Heights Crossing was under construction. To be honest with you, he was kind of really, really surprised. More recently, we've been getting a lot of press in the papers from Hertz Media. There's a front page article this past Wednesday on what's going on in town. There was one in the middle of summer that talked about $300 million in investment in town. There's a history behind that, but the reporter used to be the editor of the Darien Times. Now she has a bigger role to do that. Her name is Sandy Diamond Fox, and she just does a great job. Then more recently, about 2 months ago, State Senator Bob Duff and CeCe Mara came to visit Darien, along with our own Tracy Mara, who's always here, and other dignitaries. We all toured Norotan Heights. It was called the Walking Tour. They used that area as a great example of transit-oriented development. They came away impressed with the walkability of the area, and Darien is now the shining example of a poster child of best practices for the state of Connecticut. At the end of that meeting, a number of folks came up to me after the meeting and asked how their communities can replicate what we have done. What I can tell you is that we started on this in 2010. The Norotan Heights Overlay District was passed on October 5th, 2010. That's 15 years ago. We don't do anything fast in our town. David Genovese's project in downtown was at least 10 years ago. But it was clear to me when the people asked you that question that we're doing something right. There was people there from Westport, Wilton, Danbury, the state centers I spoke about. They were like, wow, can you come up to our town? I said, actually, no, I can't. But Jeremy can. What else we got next? Tell us more about the town's authority to set standards versus the state of Connecticut's ability to impose requirements upon communities relative to zoning. And a follow-up question, how will the Planning and Zoning Commission deal with the new Connecticut housing legislation if it takes away from local control? It is a big concern of ours, so yes, it's a big concern on everybody's mind. It is the ramifications of House Bill 8002, which was signed by the governor in late November, which is actually the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, before everyone went home for Thanksgiving weekend. You may recall that a prior bill was passed in the spring, which was called 5002, and that was vetoed by the governor in June. There was a lot of small communities down in Fairfield County that chimed in, including our first selectman, reached out to the governor and said, this really does not work for our town. Negotiations were held over the summer and fall relative to modifying that bill to make it more palatable to the governor and to many, but not all, local communities in the state of Connecticut. The bill that was signed is known as House Bill 8002, which I said. It's 104 pages long with 53 separate sections. I think A.B. Zagrodzky read the whole thing from front to back, but obviously it's way too much detail to cover this evening. Towns are still figuring out what actions need to be taken at the local level. Some of the portions of the bill go into effect on January 1st, 2026, which is about 23 days from now, and others have already taken effect. The next one. Yep, there we go. The planning and zoning staff, led by Jeremy, is going to go to a number of meetings and training sessions to better understand the bill's impacts on Darien and possible regulation amendments and studies of what need to be done at the local level. We're likely to see changes for some of our regulations, possibly the town zoning map in response to that bill. A few of the items in House Bill 8002, now known as Public Act 25-1, middle housing development as of right. Middle housing development, 2 to 9 units are allowed by a summary process similar as an as of right approval on any area zoned for commercial or mixed-use development. So you can convert a commercial building to a residential building as of right or a summary application. The difference in our town, which we have to figure it out, is we have ARB, Architecture Review Board. We also have the local traffic authority, the police department, and the fire department, plus the health department that look at all this stuff, and also the sewer commission. So we have to figure out how that's going to work out. The next thing is tiny home protections, prohibits the manufacturing of homes, prohibits manufactured homes from being treated differently under municipal zoning and other similar residential developments, regardless of size, potentially adding additional flexibility to the use of tiny homes. Those are like pool houses. You can buy it online. They cost I think they cost $1,000 a foot. And you have to put it in your backyard. It's got to be affixed to a foundation which can't move. We're not going to see those in town, but that's okay. DOH as statewide authority, the Department of Housing may, with approval from the Council of Housing Development, develop housing on state land. They may also sell or lease the land for housing in our town. We do have a couple significant size pieces of state-owned land in our town. We've been in discussion with the town, with the states in that some way, shape, or form. That's actually at the first Selectman's level. That did happen in Westport. If you know anything about the Zagrodzky train station in Westport, that's a lot of state-owned land. It took them, I think, 3 years for the town of Westport to get control of that land. And then they gave it to a developer, but they still never built anything there. Statewide wastewater study, as required by the Office of Policy and Management, that's the OPM, DEEP, and the Council of Housing Development, to conduct a statewide water capacity study, which must be completed by July 1st, 2026. We don't have a wastewater treatment plant in Darien. Our wastewater stuff goes to Stanford. We can't tell Stanford to make it bigger. There's some like pump stations in town, but there's nothing we can really do about that. When Norwalk expanded their wastewater treatment plant, they were supposed to give some of it to Ridgefield. They landed up not doing it to Ridgefield. So I don't know how that's going to work, but that's something that's going to happen. Housing growth planning, the town must adopt a plan or join their council of governments, which is the COG John was talking about, and regional detail to develop strategies to increase affordable housing units. Like I said earlier, our affordable housing figure is 14% of a new project, anything over 4 units. Other towns only have 10%. Some have actually 0. Regional housing needs, it assigns the Council of Governments a responsibility to set town-by-town affordable housing goals and inform the Office of Policy Management, housing needs assessments, and technical support. Like John said earlier, we don't really have a whole lot of vacant land in town, and there's not many spots you can put more housing. So I'm a little worried about that because someone else can tell you what to do, but I think we're going to be okay. The next one is state has eliminated the town's ability to require on-site parking for multifamily projects of 16 units or less. For larger projects, they have said that the state can require, based upon a developer-funded study, or no more than 1 space for a studio apartment, one for 1 bedroom, 2 spaces for 2 or 3 bedroom units. We may need to modify our zoning code for that. We already did it twice already, relative to that, but I don't think it's going to be a big issue. Needless to say, that bill, which I said is 100+ pages, there are lots of provisions in it. As you can see by the slide, many of them relate to parking. To the next slide. Yep, we did this already. Yeah. Many of them relate to parking. We have concern about buildings that may be constructed without sufficient on-site parking, but we're of the belief that many developers will want to provide on-site parking. In our town, parking actually adds value to a project. It does not detract from it. I'm not sure that buying or renting a unit with no parking on site is going to be super attractive to many people who live in Darien. With that said, thank you for everyone who did submit questions. If anyone wants a question now, feel free to grab the microphone, or else we'll move on to better people. You can tell that the town continues to be under development pressure, and the state of Connecticut legislature continues to get more and more involved in local zoning. At the same time, the Planning and Zoning Commission is working on our 10-year plan of conservation development, which will guide us going forward. We're here at the local level to continue to find the right balance between being a mid-sized to small New England town, tucked between two of the largest cities in the state of Connecticut, being Norwalk and Stamford. At the same time, the state is putting more pressure on communities like Darien, but not only Darien, to allow more housing and less local review. I am very concerned with State Bill 8002, and it will not be the last piece of legislation that chips away from those local zoning, but we are trying to hold the line. Like I said earlier, we're almost done. I would guess that additional legislation will come in future years as the legislator realizes that there are many more factors at work relative to what gets built rather than the local zoning code. We will continue to work with Darien's legislators, including Tracy Moore and Bob Duff and whoever else wants to help us to understand the potential impacts of the various bills, and if necessary, send in or give testimony, which I've done in the past along with the First Selectman's office and for the last 3 First Selectmen that we have had. There are many changes coming from Hartford that we continue to monitor, understand, and respond to them. On a brighter note, I expect that the final Corbin District project will be coming complete in 2026. As I said, it will be done in the near future. Norotan Heights is also nearly done. Those projects, our downtown and the Heights, will become more walkable and be reinvigorated as a local business district and a community business district with restaurants and retail uses, and also big office tenants and small office tenants. We're quite pleased with the changes in Norotan Heights, and I expect and also pleased to the final outcome for the Corbin District once that construction is completed. So with that said, in conclusion, I want to wish all of you the best in 2026 and have a healthy, happy holiday season, and thank you very much for your time.
If everybody'd like to stand for about 15 seconds, be my guest. Oh, yes.
See what? No.
Shouldn't affect you. That's that.
Okay.
You should be good. If not, we're going to go.
All right. I just people touch buttons and I'm like live, right? All right. Great.
Oh, I didn't know you. That's great. I timed that just right. Okay, everybody, let's go. If I'd had any idea, you're damn right. Jeez. Oh, thank you you could do that for me? Thank you. Oh, Jesus. Damn right. Give me a break. He knew better than that.
I mean, that was just awful.
It was awful.
Around with that stuff, people are through.
Oh, no. Speaking on behalf, are we ready? All right, I'll get out of the way here. Let me know when we're ready. Speaking about the Board of Education, Robin Nelson, the chair.
So do I press? Sorry, it's not.
Just press the space bar. This, right, I'm sorry, here. Right now.
Oh, that one. Yeah,
Ready?
that's okay. Yes,
Let me
thank
know
you.
now.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Starting?
You want to press it now? Just press the space bar. Yep. There we go.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, members of the RTM, fellow elected officials, and members of the community. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of the Darien Board of Education. I would like to begin by thanking my fellow members of the Board of Education for your dedication and commitment to our students that this role requires. Thank you to Dennis Maroney, David Brown, Sarah Parent, Katie Lublin, Greg Grambling, Joanna Walsh, and our two newest Board of Education members, Jonathan Dunn and William Vredenberg. I would also like to recognize and thank Jill McCammon and John Sini, who recently retired from the Board of Education. Jill McCammon served for 9 years on the Board of Education, most recently as chair of the board. Jill helped bring many of our recent capital projects to fruition, having served as co-chair of the Hindley Homes Royal Building Committee and as chair of the Darien High School Building Committee. John Sini served on the Board of Education for 6 years, most recently as chair of the Finance and Negotiations Subcommittees, who helped lead the DEA contract negotiations this year. Thank you both for your many years of dedicated service to the Darien community. I would also like to thank Jeff DeMeo for creating the video montage that is playing during my speech. The video shows highlights of our students' performances and activities in music, theater, the arts, clubs, athletics, and in our schools throughout this past year. You will also see examples of our recent building projects featuring Hindley, Holmes, and Royal Elementary Schools, which the RTM and Board of Finance have so generously funded to benefit our students and schools. I would like to start with some basic facts for this year. There are currently 4,477 children enrolled in K through 12, with another 110 children in our popular preschool ELP program. Our most recent enrollment study from MP Planning Group, which was presented in our November 25th Board of Education meeting, projected out 10 years to 2035. The projections anticipate an increase of approximately 86 students over the next 5 years, or just under 2% growth, and a total increase of 240 students over the next 10 years. As always, the Darien Board of Education carefully monitors the anticipated growth each year in our elementary schools and our total projected student enrollment to ensure that our school facilities have adequate capacity for future growth. I would like to begin by sharing some highlights from this past year that illustrate our district's commitment to enhancing teaching and learning for our students through our ongoing focus on curriculum and instruction, which together are the cornerstone of Darien Public Schools. A primary focus this year is the full implementation of our new K-3 literacy resource, using high-quality science of reading aligned materials and instructional practices. Additionally, we have initiated a new program this year called the Darien Public Schools Orton Gillingham Academy, in which we launched district-wide teacher training in the Orton Gillingham structured literacy approach to support students with dyslexia and other language-based learning differences. We have also approved 3 new Darien High School courses for 2025: Astronomy, American Sign Language 3, and Cybersecurity. In terms of student academic achievement trends, our recent assessment data shows that our schools are delivering an excellent education for our students. For example, for grades 3 through 8, Smarter Balanced ELA and math testing trends show sustained high performance with consistent year-over-year growth. It is important to highlight that our high-needs students also demonstrated notable academic growth, reflecting the impact of targeted supports and intervention structures. Darien High School student outcomes are trending well in terms of SAT and ACT scores, as well as AP testing, and are at the high end of our comparable DIRG schools. For advanced placement exams specifically, this past year, 1,266 AP exams were taken by 528 students, with 95% earning a score of 3 or higher, up from 92% 3 years ago. Additionally, in our world language program this year, 149 seniors, or 43%, earned the Connecticut Seal of Biliteracy. I would also like to highlight that we are celebrating the 25th year of our science research program at DHS, which had 45 students compete in the Connecticut STEM Fair this year, with 9 of our students earning 1st through 4th place prizes for their research and projects. In performing arts, Darien was named one of the best communities for music education by the NAM Foundation for the 5th year in a row, for outstanding achievement in providing access to music education for all students. Darien was one of 34 districts in the state to be recognized. As you can see from the video, our performing arts and theater productions continue to provide our community with a variety of excellent student performances. Our athletics programs also have continued to have successful seasons, with many student athletes participating every year. The DHS girls field hockey team, girls lacrosse team, and girls hockey team all won the FCX championship and the Connecticut State Championship. The boys hockey team and boys tennis team were both Connecticut State champions, and the girls squash team won the Fair West Championship. Our unified sports program also had strong participation, with up to 49 students participating in each of the 3 seasons last year in soccer, basketball, and track. Congratulations to all of our Darien student athletes for their hard work and dedication. I would also like to highlight the Board of Education's achievements and operational priorities that we focused on this year, in addition to our ongoing oversight of our strategic plan goals. One of the most important priorities of the Board of Education this year was to conduct a successful superintendent search after Dr. Adley's retirement in June. The board contracted with school leadership to conduct the search for a new superintendent. School leadership conducted stakeholder focus groups and a community survey, and then created a profile for the new superintendent that was adopted by the Board of Education. The board unanimously appointed Dr. Eric Byrne as permanent superintendent on October 28th. The board is thrilled to have Dr. Byrne's leadership for our schools, having had the opportunity to work with him closely for 4 months while he was serving as interim superintendent. I would like to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Byrne, who is here tonight at his first RTM State of the Town meeting. Another important board priority this year was to negotiate the new DEA teacher contract, which was voted on earlier tonight by the RTM. Thank you to the members of the RTM for your support of the DEA contract. The strategic focus of the negotiations, as Liza and Peter also had talked to you about, was on the recruitment and retention of teachers, professional learning, improving attendance, and creating a more fiscally responsible salary schedule that provides the district with more budget predictability from year to year. The board anticipates that this new contract will help achieve our educational priorities of attracting and retaining our teachers in a time of national teacher shortages, as well as provide new professional learning opportunities for our teachers, all of which will ultimately benefit our students. Following up on the communications plan that the board created last year, the board has also continued to prioritize the important work of enhancing engagement and communication between our community, board, and district administration. I would like to highlight several communications improvements that have recently been implemented. The Darien Difference is our new monthly newsletter that Dr. Byrne introduced in September, which features one of our schools each month to showcase how the vision of the graduate is in action in each of our schools every day, and how that contributes to setting Darien apart from other districts in Connecticut. I encourage you to read it. All of this is available on the Darien website on the homepage. And they tell great stories about all of our students and what our teachers are doing in our schools. Dr. Byrne has also introduced his weekly community update, which features detailed highlights each week for our parents, as well as new interactive sessions for our parent community, such as fireside chats and parent university sessions, where parents can submit questions and learn more about our curriculum and programming at our schools. We have also updated the district website, which now features mobile-friendly navigation and viewing, and our district now has a new social media presence to highlight and share important news with our community. The Darien District's Instagram handle is Darien Public Schools _CT. The board is also focused on delivering a fiscally responsible fiscal 27 budget, aligned with and supporting our district strategic priorities. Dr. Byrne presented his initial fiscal forecast in our October 28th board meeting, which provided a preview of the administration's initiatives and priorities for the fiscal year 27 budget, as well as the preliminary capital plan forecast. The Board of Education remains committed to providing the best possible education for our students and shares the community's desire to prioritize student needs and programming. To help achieve that goal, a new budget development process has been designed to shift the administration and Board of Education focus to strategic alignment with our goals and educational programming. The board and administration have met with town officials and community groups to explain the new process and share how we think it will create a streamlined and effective budget development process this year. For financial context, our current average cost per pupil in October 2025 is $26,242, which is below the average of our comparable district reference group. Darien's October 2024 average cost per pupil was $25,494, which was also below the average of our DIRG. The board looks forward to collaborating with town elected officials and the RTM in bringing forward a fiscally responsible fiscal year 27 budget that meets the needs of our students and is financially responsible to our taxpayers. Thank you to the RTM and Board of Finance for continuing to invest in our schools. Your support allows us to provide our students with a high-quality curriculum, instruction, and extracurricular programming that have sustained Darien School's reputation for excellence in education. I would also like to highlight progress on the Hindley Holmes Royal Elementary building projects. Thank you to HHR Chair Christopher Price and the town's HHR Building Committee members for their work and leadership overseeing these significant renovations of 3 of our elementary schools. We are approximately 80 to 85% complete with new addition construction, and the project is anticipated to be on time and under budget, with a target completion date of August 2026. I would like to highlight by school the new rooms that have been constructed to date. At Hindley, we have built a new Global Learning's common area and music, instrumental music, and art classrooms. Holmes now has a new main entrance, 4 new classrooms, and new music and instrumental music rooms. At Royal, we have built 8 new classrooms. Each school has also received new bathrooms, small offices, storage, and specialty meeting rooms as part of these additions. The only remaining new additions to be built are the Royal Music Wing and Holmes Library, which are on track to begin in spring and summer 2026. Thank you to the RTM for supporting these capital investments that are bringing much-needed additional capacity and improvements for our schools. And I also want to note that after this is completed, we will no longer have portables at our schools. Thank you to the RTM. Finally, I would like to touch on some of the board's future planning for 2026. This spring, we will begin developing two important plans, our new strategic plan and our new technology plan. Both will be 5-year plans incorporating the latest opportunities for innovation and the most significant challenges facing the district. We anticipate focusing on topics such as artificial intelligence, science of reading, professional learning, meeting the needs of all learners, and curriculum and course development. Additionally, we are working on developing a plan to address the significant facilities needs at Middlesex Middle School. The Board of Education and Administration are taking a deep dive into a recent study of the Middlesex facility that was presented by KG&D Architects. We will be sharing more information on our plans for Middlesex in 2026 as this process progresses. I would like to conclude by thanking our superintendent, Dr. Byrne, and the administration, teachers, and staff of Darien Schools for all of their work delivering an excellent education to our students. I would also like to thank my fellow board members for the privilege and responsibility of serving as the chair of the Darien Board of Education. The Board of Education and the administration together strive to align our curriculum and educational programs to our district's mission and vision of the graduate, to ensure that our students graduate from Darien schools with not only a strong academic foundation, but also having had the opportunity to build the critical skills and competencies that will better equip them to succeed in an increasingly complex and globalized world. As creative thinkers, effective communicators and collaborators, compassionate, empathetic, and resilient individuals, independent and curious, and people with integrity. Students are always our top priority. As we have always done, moving forward, we will continue to make decisions in the best interests of all of our children and their educational needs. It is a privilege to address the RTM in town tonight on behalf of the Board of Education. We appreciate the RTM's ongoing support of our schools and students. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I wish you all a healthy, safe, and happy holiday season. We look forward to future discussions in 2026. Thank you.
Next, on behalf of the Board of Finance, Jim Palen, Chair.
So, this is your PDF? Yeah. You got the two-finger thing? Yep. Yeah. So, just like, get the mouse back over here. There you go.
Well, I guess going last is usual for the Board of Finance here, but I guess that for those of you that are watching, it's almost halftime in the Eagles game. So I'll try to get this done before halftime is over. So thank you all for having me here tonight. I thought I'd do things a little bit different tonight than I've done in the past years. This is my 11th year on the Board of Finance. Before that, I spent about 10 years here on the RTM. So I thought what I could do tonight is I was going to put up our audit from the last year and walk through that line by line. Are there any accountants in the audience? Like, would people enjoy that? There's 2 more audits that go on before that. So, okay, in all seriousness here, thank you for having me all. I do have the pleasure to serve with 6 other members on the Board of Finance, all of which have been on the Board of Finance for a long time and or been on the RTM. And it's really I do feel like one of the Board of Finance, although we won't have flashy videos or drone videos or things like that. It's a very hard board, and I don't think I could do the job that I do as chair without my fellow 6 colleagues that I have on the Board of Finance. And our new finance director, Josh Kaufman, who joined us a year ago when Jennifer Chernosky took over as a town administrator. So this is a slide. I've updated the pictures, but it's one of the things that I believe, and I think many of the folks on the Board of Finance agree with me, is important to all the decisions we make here in town, because almost everything costs money. So I think in order to make Darien successful, to make it be a place that we all enjoy living, and ultimately when we decide to no longer live here, other people want to move here and live, we think it's important that we sort of balance how we spend and invest in the town to make sure we're hitting on all of these different topics. Robin spoke to our educational facilities in our schools, which I think are top-notch, always ranked at the very top or near the top every single year within the state of Connecticut and throughout the region. We've invested close to about $165 million in our schools, a new school at Ox Ridge and major improvements going on at Hindley, Holmes, and Royal schools. Our overall tax base. You heard Mr. Olvany talk a bit about what's some of the developments going on in town. Over the last few years, and these projects that are ongoing, we'll add about $500 million to our grant list. That'll grow the appraised value of our grant list by about 3%. So that means that all the taxes that we raise every year are spread out over a base that's about 3% larger each year. But that's a one-time increase, although there are some more properties coming on now, right? With expenditures going up by 3 to 4% per year, all of that development, all of that increase in the grant list basically offsets 1 year of tax growth. But it is important to continue to drive to widen that tax base and to make sure we're making investments that continue to drive up the value of real estate in Darien. Our parks, beaches, and open spaces. Since COVID, folks are spending an extra day, 2 days, sometimes 5 days a week at home. We see a lot of our outdoor facilities getting more use. We saw the acquisition of Great Island, the investments we're making down in Pear Tree Point. We think it's imperative that we continue to invest in what is, close to 250 acres of open space and parkland and beaches that we have in town. We think in making sure we continue to invest in dependable public services. That's fire, police, EMS. We're very lucky that all of the volunteers at our Post 53 and the fire departments are all not paid. We do facilitate investments in fire trucks and other equipment and so forth. But if you look at public works, police, parks and rec, all of the staff that makes everything in town actually happen, we need to make sure we continue to invest in those. Geographically, there's not much we can do to change that. But we do continue to be located close to New York City on the Long Island Sound, in an area which, despite seeing more and more traffic every year, is a very attractive place to live geographically. And up until now, and hopefully in the future, we've been able to make this all happen by being fiscally responsible and creating what I would say is a competitive tax and value combination for when folks move to town, great services, great education, and also an attractive tax rate. I think as we talk about new additions and new investments in our towns, whether it be on sidewalks, facilities, Great Island, our schools, we need to make sure that we keep the financial picture in mind. Looking back at fiscal 2025, we're in the process of finishing up the audit, should be done in the next few weeks here. So these numbers are all preliminary until we pass the audit, but I've broken this graphic up a little bit differently than I have in last year's. And so on the top, we're going to talk about revenues. I've broken it up between what I call non-capital related revenues and capital related revenues. On the tax side, you saw that we came in, we raised 1.6 million more in taxes than we had expected. Part of that was due to conservative estimates in our collection rate. You may recall, particularly many of you on F&B, we assume we collect 99.5% of our taxes. This year, we moved it up to 99.6%, as we've seen continued, extremely high collection rates. So that was 1.6 million of a surplus. On the other side, we collected other revenues, which include fees that you pay at town hall and the town clerk's office, and investment income. That was about $900,000 greater than what we had budgeted. One of the biggest increases was in investment earnings. The yield curve, the short end of the yield curve stayed a little bit higher, a little bit longer than we thought, and based on the amount of bond proceeds, that all sort of helped to generate some incremental investment revenues. So all in all, on the revenue side, we collected 2.4 million than we expected to collect. On the expense side, I'm going to drop down to the second one. On the town side, and excluding debt service, but all the town services and the library, we had a $1.4 million surplus. Part of that was due to staffing, positions that we were not able to fill, including at our police department. The Board of Education returned about $600,000. They had a $600,000 surplus. A lot of that was driven by excess, or I should say, higher than expected grant receipts under the ECR funding that supplements special education. And then in our debt service, well, that was spot on because that's underneath the Board of Finance's control. Cue the laugh. Okay, so if you're counting, we collected 2.4 million more than we expected, and we spent 2 million less than what we expected, so that should mean that we're 4.4 million ahead of budget. Well, the way that we actually approve a lot of the capital expenditures, you may know, for the 2026 capital that you all voted on last May, we actually take that out of the 2025 budget. So when you back out the $3 million of capital that we approved out of the general fund last year, and then about 100,000 that you all approved as a supplemental appropriation to fund a few of the facilities hires that we made at the police station, that leaves us with a net increase in the general fund reserves, the rainy day fund, if we refer to it, as 1.3 million. So another good year, collected more revenue than we expected. We've continued to tighten in our assumptions, and on the expenditure side, both on the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen side, they found surpluses, virtually all of which were returned back to the coffers, if you will, to be used next year. How do we compare when you look at local property taxes? On this graphic, I've updated this from what I showed last year. I outline for 8 different surrounding towns what the mill rates are and how they've fared over the past 11 years. On the very bottom in the orange, if you can see in the back, that's Greenwich. Greenwich, given its sort of larger than average commercial base, has always had a historically lower mill rate and higher home values. Just above that, the dark blue line, the blue wave as I call it, right, is Darien. So we have among the lowest mill rates in the entire state of Connecticut out of the 169 towns. Part of that, I think, is due to the way in which we run our expenditures and so forth, and the care that we put into making investments in this town. Part of it's also based on the fact that home values in Darien have continued to rise, and over the last 5 years, the average home in Darien rate increased by about 25%. We saw that in last year's valuation. When you look at the far right-hand side of this graph, you'll see everything pretty much went up and to the right. There were no revaluations that took place in the last 12 months. So these are all sort of apples to apples comparisons. If you look back to the left, you'll see some sharp dives. Well, that's when if you recall, when we revalued all the properties, grand list grew, so the mill rate declined to create, a sort of relatively moderate year-over-year increase in revenue. If I was to zoom in on the blue line there in Darien, you would see it kicked up. The Darien mill rate is about 8% lower than New Canaan, our neighbor to the north, and it's about 22% higher than Greenwich. But if you look at the steepness of that line, what I would point to is our mill rate went up by about 5.5% last year. Part of that were due to some one-time increases and some of the debt service with some of our other projects in terms of Oxford, Great Island, and HHR all coming on board. But our mill rate went up by 5.5% versus the average of all 8 of these went up by 2.7%. So we were almost double the average, given some of what we hope are one-time things that we had to deal with last year. Okay. What do we spend? If you look at this graph, this is a total of everything we spend, not just tax dollars, but these are the expenditures that are funded by tax dollars, fees, investment income, and state grants. In 2026, that was $190 million, and I expect in 2027, that amount will get closer to $200 million. And if you think about everything that we spend, we've talked a lot about debt service in the past and the amount of debt that the town has taken on. Personally, I focus not just on the quantum of debt that we have outstanding, which right now it's about just under $230 million, but I look at the actual debt service that we pay. And the debt service that we pay this year should be around $15 million. So when you look at $15 million out of $190 million total expenditures, that's a tad under 8%. One of the things that I've been focused on and our board has talked a lot about is ensuring that our overall debt service doesn't occupy too much of our total expenditures. The soft target that I've looked at is around 10%, and I'd like the town to be able to keep our total debt service to below 10% of our overall expenditures. And we don't get there just by increasing overall expenditures. We want to make sure we continue to be prudent. And if you look at some of the historical growth rates, you can see last year that grew by 7%, the year before 4.9. Sorry, the 5-year growth rate was 4.9, and the 10-year growth rate was 3.4. So things are definitely trending upwards. If you look at our historical debt that's outstanding, I've been on the Board of Finance for 11 years, so I joined when it was all the way back here on the left. And now it's moved all the way up here to the right. We have about $229 million worth of debt outstanding. That includes about 180 of traditional long-term bonds and about $49 million worth of bond anticipation notes, which we rolled for a few years, which were basically covered half the cost of Great Island. In April, we'll go to market and we'll turn those out into long-term debt. But effectively, we'll end this year with about $230 million worth of debt. Again, that's the highest number that Darien has ever had, but it's well below the limits that the rating agencies would approve and significantly below any types of caps that we might be subject to in state statute. So we have a lot of room if we need to make long-term investments, but we want to be conscious of what those investments do, what those bondings do to our overall debt service. On the bottom here, you can see what this is our overall debt service. You can see on the right, the 8.7 and 6.4 is just over $15 million of debt service. Again, approximately 8% of our total expenditures. This does not include the bonding for the project that was approved a few months ago at Pear Point Beach, and there are a few other smaller appropriations for fire truck apparatus that will be bonded as well. When you look a little bit deeper at our existing indebtedness, this is how our debt rolls off, the debt that we have on our balance sheet today. So that $229 million, you can see in 10 years, a little bit more than 10 years, it'll be cut in half. It'll be closer to $100 million. Most of our debt has been always issued over 20 years. The purchase of Great Island, because the state allows us to issue 30-year debt for the acquisition of land, that's the only project that we bonded over 30 years in the past 20 years. If you look at what that means from a debt service perspective, You can see debt service now is around 15 million. It'll tick up a little bit as we bond out, as we term out this ban right here. But generally, it's level debt service for the next 10 years and then starts to trail off. So what this means is any new bonding will effectively be placed on top of that. And so we'll have to follow closely what the speed of debt service growth is as a percentage of our overall spending. The Board of Education and School Services occupy about 75% of our overall spending when you look at the operating expenses and the debt service associated with all the school projects and compare that to the town operating expenses and all of the debt service on their projects. So we obviously study that operating budget and their capital expenditures very closely as well. The biggest driver on the education side is the sheer number of students. You can see from this graphic about 10 years ago, enrollment peaked just below 5,000 students. And with absent a few years in 21 and 22 post-COVID, generally that has trended down. Over the past 10 years, our total student enrollment has dropped by 9%. Now that doesn't mean that every school has dropped by 9%. We're seeing different rates of change in the secondary schools as we are in the elementary schools. And we've made some investments in HHR and previously in Oxford to account for some of the changing demographics of our students, but this is something to kind of keep an eye on as we continue to invest in our facilities. I think as Robin mentioned, that the Board of Ed recently had a enrollment report which showed enrollment starting to tick up, but we'll have to watch that closely because, total enrollment in Darien has always been a little bit hard to predict just given that the town is, absent some of the new developments that are taking place. We're about 99.5% developed. There's not a lot of open lots for new single-family homes. On the bottom side is expenditures per student. You can see that this has continued to trend up over time, although you can see different than some of our other expenditures, the total expenditures per student has actually started to decline in the rate of growth. Interest rates. Interest rates really affect the town in two different ways. One, in terms of when we borrow money. When we borrow money, we're generally borrowing it on a tax-exempt basis. And if you can see, three of these lines here, the black, the dark gray, and the light gray are the 30-year, 20-year, and 10-year tax-exempt rates that we actually borrow at. You can see those graphics over the past 12 months, those lines are coming down. So that means future bonding that we'll do, including the one that will likely come to market in April for, will be at lower rates. But also embedded in this graph are three colored lines, the blue, the green, and the red. These show the taxable rates, okay, including the red line, which is sort of the one-year treasury, which is analogous to short-term money market funds. This is where our treasurer reinvests money. So while overall bonding costs are expected to be coming down, the amount of money that we earn in investment earnings should also come down as rates continue to come down, and we'll see what the Fed does here shortly to push them down further. Over the past few years, a lot of our spending increases have been offset by increased investment earnings, not only because short-term rates were so high and we were able to take advantage of all those rates, but because we had a lot of cash on our balance sheet, because we had a lot of large capital projects that we were moving forward with. We pre-funded a lot of money for Oxford and for HHR, and when those monies sit on our balance sheet, our treasurer invests those, tries to earn as much money as possible, and that money helps to defray not only the debt service, but other parts of our budget. So this is something we're going to be watching closely this budget season as rates, continue to come down. I'll be brief on this slide. This is something we went over last year as well, right? Our guidance for this year is both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education need to really think about and prioritize what they're spending their money on to make sure that they're getting the best bang for the buck and it's being spent on the services and the capital that they think is provides the highest return to our residents. I think I speak for the entire board when I say we have a great working relationship with the Board of Ed, the superintendent and his staff, as well as the Board of Selectmen, town administrator, and all the town staff. I think it's a real partnership the number of things that both of these boards and the Board of Finance and the RTM all have to sort of tackle together. Certainly my experience has been, it's been a very partnership type of approach, and I expect it to stay the same way. This is another graphic I put up last year, and I got a lot of comments on it, so I wanted to briefly touch on it again. These are all the things that really influence the overall tax rate that we need to charge our residents. We really need to be thinking about the timing and size of capital projects. All of the capital projects, I think, that are being considered have all been well thought out, I think can add a lot of value to our community. But because all of these capital projects come with additional debt and or taxation, which create debt service and could crowd out operating expenses, we need to very carefully think through what projects we're going to work on and how we're going to stage them to make sure it doesn't have an unexpected increase on the size of our for our taxation. Contracts. Robin and I think Peter talked a little bit about the teacher's contract. I was on that committee with Robin and some of her colleagues to help renegotiate that. I think that was a great example of a contract that the Board of Ed that looked at sort of how we compensate our teachers, which are our largest sort of employee base, looked at what their priorities were, how they were trying to attract new ones, looked at the overall cost of health insurance, and in the end took what I thought was a very holistic approach with the union to finding out something that was kind of provided what the school needed, what the staff needed, and what we thought was financially feasible long term. On the bottom left, the grand list growth. Right? I mentioned the $500 million worth of grand list growth, which basically added 3% to our grand list. That's great because it spreads the expenses out over a larger base. But we should all be cognizant of when the grand list is growing and we are adding all of these new developments, there are additional costs that come along with that. We've had to increase our staffing on the fire marshal side, increase our staffing on the health department side, in the building and planning department side. So as the town grows, the expenses, the number of employees, FTEs that we need to service all of these facilities grows as well. This is another slide I'll leave you with. It's exact replica from last year. I think it's very important that when we look at how we're spending our money, we continue to break it down between things that are core expenditures, reading, writing, math, things on the education side, police service, fire service, public works, things like that on the town side. And then as we sort of build on top of that, we need to make sure we're focusing on our highest priority capital projects and operating services. And then on top of that, things like Great Island, things like Oxford Schools, like other sort of large developments that are what I call sort of unique and transformative. We need to really think about those. We need to make sure they're not going to add unduly to our operating costs, and make sure that we stage a lot of those investments so we can continue to build and expand Darien, but do it sort of judiciously over time. Based on what we know about the budget and a few of the variables here, I've laid out, similar to what I did last year, the tax sensitivity of different spending decisions. Okay? In big red letters, I put this year, this is preliminary, right? But if we make some assumptions and we assume that the grand list grows by 75 basis points, last year it grew by about 72 basis points. So I'm making a very comparable assumption. Last year we had assumed it was going to grow by 100 basis points, but it grew by less than that. Our collection rate, I mentioned last year we moved from 99.5 to 99.6. The debt service growth, based on where rates are today and the bonding that we're going to do, and the bonding structure that we'll use, we expect debt service will grow by about 4.5%. And then if I look at investment earnings, we're assuming the dollar amount of investment earnings that we'll be able to program into this budget will be less than last year. That's in part because we're just going to have less dollars. Last year, we had a lot of bond proceeds on hand that our treasurer was able to sort of strategically invest, but also interest rates are coming down. So given the quantity of dollars and the interest rate that we'll invest them, we expect that will come down. Using those four assumptions as core, I then put together two different analyses. What happens on the spending side, and I lump both capital, Board of Ed, and Board of Selectmen together, and that's across the top of the columns of the top chart. And on the left side, I look at the amount of dollars, excess reserves that we'll have on hand in our general fund that we can contribute in lieu of taxing our residents. Last year, we contributed $3 million. And the expectation was that we'd probably have $2 to $3 million left over this year to be able to contribute. You saw from the graph where we ended, we expect to deposit an extra $1.3 million back into the general fund. And if we account for some growth in our overall budget, then it's likely that we'll be able to contribute somewhere between $1.5 and $2.5 million from the general fund this year. So the way to read this graphic is across the top is where the spending decisions of the Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen end up, both on the operating and capital side. And the left side is the amount of cash we can contribute from on hand. And in the middle, that's what would happen to the resulting tax levy, the total dollars of taxes that we need to raise. So in that green area, you can see that it ranges from like 4.6 to 5. The bottom graph looks at those same two variables, the amount of spending increase on the operating capital side, and in the left, the amount of money that we contribute from the general fund, and it looks at what happens to the actual mill rate, the taxes that you all pay. The reason the bottom numbers are always lower than the top numbers is because when there's grand list growth, that spreads the taxes over a higher number. So if total tax collections going up by 4% and the grand list is going up by 1%, then your mill rate will go up by approximately 3%. So that's what these two graphs right here show a very early read in terms of what different spending decisions, what the effect of those could be on the overall mill rate. So that's it. Hopefully halftime is not over. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. At this juncture, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Oh, that's just unanimous. All in favor, please rise.